Blockchain gaming still on the forefront, and we're looking at quite a bit of activity, not only in this downturn in the market. What appears to be happening is we're seeing more and more projects continuing their cycle of building and creating new value to the blockchain community and all, of course, Web3 gaming. So we're going to dive in a little deeper and drill down into Axie Infinity. We have a special guest today to talk about it and get a little deeper on where the project is going, how things are standing, kind of some of the advancements, get it, all that stuff for you guys. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to Metaverse Insider. Joining me today is Mr. Aleksander Larsen, who is the co-founder and COO over at Sky Mavis. Of course, you guys know it as Axie. Great to have you back, Aleksander.
Thanks, Paul. Happy to be back here. I think it's the third time now, so
Yeah, it's been
looking forward
great. We
to
always
this.
love having
Yeah,
we
thank you.
always love having game developers and especially strategic leaders in the space, because it does give, I think, the audience a much better viewpoint of how the market is developing, because it is a very fast-moving market. So I want to kind of just roll into Sky Mavis and the current state of Axie as it is now. Can you kind of give us a rundown? It's been about 6 months since we last talked to you, so I'm sure there's been a lot of changes. Where are you guys now?
Yeah, so when it comes to Axie specifically, I think what we are focusing on right now is just giving more utility to the Axie game characters, building out the universe. Focusing on some of the first party games and those with more third party games in the Axie universe overall. So what you have on the screen there is the Mavis sub, so you can see that it is expanded a little bit. Defenders of Lunaserland or Axie Doll is actually finding product market fit with the Axie community, I would say. And we're very excited about showcasing more of the great games that people are building in the Axie universe overall. And I will also say that for Axie Origins, the game itself is going through many different iterations. It's becoming a little bit more of a faster game, and we've had actually very long conversations with existing with existing app stores such as Google Play and Apple about shipping potentially the Axie Origins full game. But yeah, that's another thing that actually is taking a long time. So yeah.
So I want to kind of go into that a little bit in terms of the growth of Axie, because obviously mobile gaming is really what this is built on. iOS and the Google Play Store are critical in the development of any app as it goes out. Why do you think that's taking so long to get that rolled out into those ecosystems?
Sure. So one of the issues that we've been struggling with is that we are been communicating very heavily with Google Play and Apple about how can we actually distribute the game, right? Because we know that there's a massive, there are a lot of players that want to play Axie.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
and we are now shipping a lightweight version of Axie in certain areas of the world on Google Play, which is working okay, I would say. But one of the problems here is that when we are trying to distribute the game, the feedback that we are getting from the Apple stores of the world is that they're asking us to take out anything NFT related. They want us to
Yeah.
take out anything that's token related in general, right? So there couldn't be any sort of earning of any kind. And even people can't even trade nothing, right? So if you take all of those things out of Axie, then it's not really Axie anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
for us, that's been a little bit of a problem. And I think it's going to be a problem for the entire industry overall. And what I'd like to compare it to is imagine if you're running a 100-meter relay race and you're running against Usain Bolt, you're sitting in a wheelchair. That feels a little bit of what we're trying to do now with the Axie game without the Axie magic. Meanwhile,
Right.
rather than running or sitting in a wheelchair, you could have a Lamborghini that you were driving in. Like that's basically Axie when you have all of the Web3 features that we have in the game. So that's really the main benefit and what makes Axie unique. So yeah, I really want to double down more on that and even be more aggressive. And actually, that might mean that we won't be able to distribute on some of these app stores until we have
Mm-hmm.
forced them to change, because
Yeah.
it's becoming a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and I think what we are seeing within the gaming community, also, from a Web3 standard, is that essentially barricade that seems to be building. So, I mean, when you look at this, I mean, you get a chance to talk to these guys to a certain extent, but I'm sure you're talking to a lot of developers in the the Web3 gaming sector. Is everybody? Do you feel like everybody's kind of faced with that same thing, or is there a bigger picture of what maybe the real answer could be? Is it the platforms changing, or is it the ecosystems maybe just repositioning players and changing the way the gamers get the games?
Yeah, I think there are a few things that can change here. So basically, that the platforms, or let's say Google and Apple, that they loosen up a little bit, that they allow people to, let's say, trade NFTs and use NFTs in games, but it really is encroaching, like or really attacking one of their golden gooses, which is the Apple stores of the world,
Right.
or the app stores of the world, where they take their 30% cut. So they aren't necessarily very interested in that. So what I think is more fascinating, and what the opportunity is within blockchain gaming, is actually going direct to consumer. And we did that with the Axie Classic game, where we reached 2.7 million daily active players. The game was never available on any app stores. People had to download directly from Google Play, the APK there from our website.
Hmm.
And I think that's definitely possible to do today. But what it just means is that the Apple users around the world won't be able to experience the magic that is Axie and other Web3 games until they really start to demand it from Apple itself. I think one of the
I've
problems
had
is that we're seeing it. Yeah, it's just it's just overall we need more pressure, I think, from users
right.
that want
Yeah.
to see these benefits, and it has to come from the ground up.
What do you think about? Okay, so browser-based. I've seen a handful of browser-based games that have been very successful. In fact, very engaging. A lot of interesting aspects to them. Do you think that is a potential? I mean, mobile browser-based as well as desktop browser-based seems to be climbing in terms of popularity.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do at least parts of the game on browser, and we are doing that with some of our games as well. I mean, you can build in Unity as well, and then ship it in the browser. It is
Right.
possible. The performance might be worse for many people. It's harder to optimize in many cases. So when you are able to ship just an application in an app store, it just actually simplifies the process a lot. So for Sky Mavis, when we are building our own the Mavis Hub, which is our own distribution platform, that one of the benefits is basically that we can distribute the updates to the players in a much simpler way, rather than them having to download an APK, right? It just pushes the updates automatically.
What about the potential of aligning with some of these? If you look at Ledger's strategy, they've started to integrate games within, Ledger Live. And with that, there's probably going to open up some other aspects to Web3 native products and services. I'm thinking maybe down the road, we'll probably see something from Unstoppable or Ready Player Me. Many opportunities here. Why not go in with something like the Ledger app and, launch Cometh in the Ledger app itself to where you could play within there?
So, I mean, uh, I think the distribution aspect is really the key here, right? So for Comet, for example, they might feel like that there's a massive boost to be had by working with Ledger, and there probably is relative to their current user base. But for something like Axie, where the target is millions of users, I think that we need to go outside the current crypto space to get new people
Yeah,
in. And these kind of not smaller partnerships, because Ledger is amazing. Like, we have many ledgers that we use internally as well. It's just a different type of strategy, I would say. And the smaller you are as a game studio, it makes sense to kind of take these, easier wins, as they might be doing, and then partnering with like bigger studios in the Web3 space, and then distribute
yeah,
from there. For Axie, I would say that we are targeting the mass market, and we need to experiment very aggressively with that. Things that actually really do move the needle, and that could actually mean more tokens coming forward, so that people that join now can experience something brand new, rather than kind of having to deal with the old stuff.
yeah. Well, okay, so interoperability, it's kind of, it's the buzzword everybody talks about it. Seems like every gaming company, every analyst we talk to, interoperability. That's the way. Um, with Ronin, interoperability obviously not necessarily there. Do you feel like that is just a kind of just a dead end for where Axie is going around interoperability, or is there a future there?
So I'm very excited about the interoperability, but I think we have to start from some basic principles, so that when you are, let's say, when you use an asset in many different experiences, it actually makes sense, right? That actually the experience points that, for example, that you have in one game, you can bring them into another, and then everything is kind of collected into this one game. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Axie. So we are interoperable within the Axie universe, and then we're now also bringing in more teams into the Ronin ecosystem. It's definitely possible also that we will be adding some partnerships there and working more closely with those teams. So interoperability is definitely a theme for the future, but we also have to, I think, remember that these benefits need to be very clear rather than just some kind of buzzword that we are trying to deliver to the user.
Yeah, I look at, obviously with Animoca, you guys right there within the Animoca wheelhouse. You also look at Quid. We had the Quid guys on just the other day. And why not being able to offer the Axie NFT collections, say, on a Quid, for something like that? I mean, it seems like it would be just good partnerships coming together.
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting point, and actually this is a unique industry point for Sky Mavis, and one of the things that we can offer the partners that we are working with. So one of the problems that we see with, for example, having all assets on Ethereum is that these these assets get traded on different type of marketplaces, so you can't actually enforce any royalties for
Yeah.
the game studio. And we saw that happen like with OpenSea versus Blur. Like all of the
Hmm.
liquidity moved to Blur, and these game studios actually get wrecked. For Ronin, because it is a semi-permissioned ecosystem, we actually don't have that many competitors on the marketplace side right now. There might be in the future that we could allow others to deploy marketplaces too. But we would definitely want to make sure that these are, not infringing on the rights of the game studios that we're working with, because they care a lot about these royalty fees for trading in their ecosystem. And so that needs to make that I think is very unique about being able to work with us.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it is part of the core strategy of a lot of the game studios for the aspect of being able to get those royalties in there. So yeah, I get that now, in the sense of if you take that away, obviously it's a big crutch on being able to build a roadmap, for growth, because that's obviously a big core element of it. What about, when you look at utility and the potential to take the IP further into it? I mean, I'm thinking, augmented reality, virtual reality, physical goods, digital pets. I mean, all sorts of elements that I think obviously Axie is so vibrant in terms of design IP. It just seems like a natural. What about that?
Yeah, so we're very excited about more utility when it comes to the Axie IP, and also giving more rights to the people who own the Axies themselves. So historically, we've been a little bit conservative when it comes to the rights for the NFT, the Axie owners, but we are going to be loosening up on that very shortly. So that's a little bit exciting, I think, for Axie owners themselves. And then, of course, we as a Sky Mavis, we will be working with different type of studios. And we're also seeing a lot of interest with when it comes to just building with the Axie IP. So the merch shop is very also coming very soon, and I think the potential for Axie as an IP to be world spanning is definitely there. That was always the
Yeah.
vision, and always what attracted me to the art itself is that I really felt like it has this instant appeal. So very excited about taking next steps for the IP itself.
Okay, so just for our viewers and listeners, if you're in the podcast or maybe on the video side of this episode, we are going to be announcing some pretty big things happening at Axie, so make sure and stick around for that. Also, make sure and hit the like button, because it is one of the ways that people help. It helps this video be discovered by other people that are interested in Web3 gaming. So please do that. Leave some comments down below. I want to get into Ronin, Aleksander, and you look at what your strategies are with this. Obviously, Ronin staking is a big announcement. Why should anyone stake Ron? What's the big value there?
Yeah, so when it comes to Ronin staking, it's tied directly to a big technical upgrade. We're moving into delegated proof of stake, so further decentralizing the network. And when people are staking their tokens, they are able to earn rewards while at the same time increasing the security of the network itself.
Hmm.
So these are I would say the biggest benefits there. There is no like long lockup time, and the risk that you're taking is you can't get slashed as just a staker. The risk is actually that if you are delegating to the wrong or a validator goes down, you just don't earn rewards for a small period of time
I
until
see.
you redelegate to another validator. So there really is not anything negative with staking in that sense. You're just showing your support for a specific party that we're working with. So that might be Google, for example, who is a validator in the Ronin network. Community gaming, Nansen, you can show your support in many different cases, or even to some of
Right.
the other standard validators that will be competing for the slots to validate the network itself.
So, I mean, staking it's very popular. We're starting to see a lot more, not only investors, but I think enthusiasts in general starting to understand it. Obviously, it's really what drives the ETH ecosystem, and it continues to do so. So I like the strategy. I want to see how it plays out, within your community, because if we do see a lot of action there, one, I think that really says a lot about the community itself, which is, are you expecting a lot of success with that?
Staking has always been something that we knew was needed for Axie or for Sky Mavis, I would say, so that we could increase the utility for the RON token, and so that a blockchain network it doesn't make sense unless there is some security that is on the line. So people need to use this. We have a lot of expectations. I think that a lot of people will stake their tokens, and of course, we are also ready to support from Sky Mavis side to make sure that this is a success. What I can say is
Yeah.
that this has been a work in progress for several years now to kind of get to this point, and I'm also excited about taking a next step after this when it comes to further decentralizing it, whether that means implementing ZK syncs or other scaling solutions down the line,
Hmm.
so that we can truly scale the network. So yeah.
Well, it's good to see. I mean, this kind of development, I think, is a positive thing overall when you look at just ecosystems and communities being able to support it. All right, let's talk about game studios building on Ronin. I know you guys have some announcements there. Talk to me a little about what's happening. Where do you see this going here in the near future?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very excited about some of the game studios that we're bringing in. As we have on the screen there, this is Tribes, which is they're making a social MMO. There are some very experienced game developers having backgrounds from King and Scopely. So what we actually loved about the founder here, his name is Glenn, is that his focus on community building really, I guess, echoed the sentiments that we have at Sky Mavis and what we did with Axie. So I think a lot of our community will really resonate with that. Like the IP is incredibly strong and colorful, and it's a part of the bet that we have, so that the people can, I guess, explore that type of genre. And the same
Hmm.
is, when we're looking at all of the different type of game studios that we are bringing in. Another one would, for example, be Directive Games. They are making a mobile kind of mobile shooter. We're very excited about working with them as well, and they will be creating not like a very standard blockchain game, but more of a blockchain 2.1 type of game, where the idea is to kind of target mainstream distribution on app stores, right? So I think every single game that we have, they have a different type of strategy, and all of these things kind of come together to form, I guess, the first batch of games. And then eventually we will be expanding from there, focusing a little bit more on, for example, PC specific games. But right now it's only mobile focused for us.
Okay, so I'm thinking about with these game studios strategically, are they using existing branded IP? Is this going to be something that we see brand new launches or some sort of connected strategy with what IP Axie already has? How is that strategy working out?
So that's actually different from some of the studios. So as I mentioned, for Tribesters, they are making a brand new IP, which is not related to Axie at all. But they might bring in the Axie community through activations, give some benefits to Axie players, for example, and see how they respond to it. And then we have another team, a Korean one, which is called Team Bali. They are actually we are doing two games with them. So the first game is an Axie game, more of a merge or type of game, where the first step here is to actually learn a little bit more about Web3 in a sense, and ship an amazing game for to our users. They have experience working on some of the most popular games like Anipang out of Korea, which that netted an insane amount of revenue. So very excited to see what they can do with the Axie IP, and also the second game that will be set outside the Axie IP. So some of these
Hmm.
partnerships that we're making, they are, we're taking a very long-term approach with this and working very closely with them. So like when
Yeah.
they are going to market, we work with them. We tell them, okay, this is what we would do in your situation. This is kind of the contracts you might need. This is the entire activation, then how we would do it. At the end of the day, these are the founders themselves. They make the judgment calls, but we want to make sure that the game studios that are deploying on Ronin don't make the same mistakes that we have done in the past.
Okay, so that's interesting. I think, when you're growing a game studio stable like this, And with what we're seeing, just within industry challenges, but also in an aspect of, the casual gamers as well as the more experienced gamers, where their trends are going. Mobile is really a big deal. Is this part of the strategy for you guys as you start to stack in studios to go after studios that have, a little bit more affinity toward mobile development, or what are you looking for there as far as your shopping list of new studios?
So this first batch, it actually comes from us reviewing, I think, between 250 and 300 different type of game studios that are building in Web3.
Mm.
And the guys that made the cut here, they are very focused on mobile because that's what we think will the immediate next
Right.
100 millions of players will come from. But we also need a different type of studio in terms of like the guys that are building, let's say even PFPs, and then eventually turning them into bigger IP and building more, I guess I would say like very ambitious games. But mobile game studios, they can create very, very ambitious games too, I would say. And I think just by looking at, for example, what Supercell has done over the past couple of years when it comes to Clash Royale, Clash of Clans in the Web2 space, I think it really shows the potential of some of these IPs. And I think we will see a lot of that actually being built in Web3 as well. The people that are here now, it's I would say it's a blue ocean, but it seems like a Red Sea, if that makes sense. So a lot of the studios that have been building, I think have been focusing on the wrong things. So it feels very, very hard. But now I think we're getting to the point where the games that they will be shipped and they will be better, and that will actually create more momentum and more excitement around the industry, and then also more excitement among the players, so that they
Yeah.
take the next step into this industry.
Aleksander, well, I mean, there was big news this week with Meta going away from NFT usage for Instagram.
Mhm.
And and with that, I look at it and I think at some point there's going to be some connective tissue here to what will happen with VR. Then you look at companies, and I was just over here on the HTC website, Viveverse, and we've had Pearly Chin, their team lead that kind of runs this on our show. What's the
Mhm.
opportunity here in terms of VR for Axie integration at some point down the road? I mean, this is a platform example that's already got a Web3 component. It's very possible we could see maybe HTC rise to the forefront here in terms of not only VR, but maybe some aspect of how Web3 could advance in gaming. What is the strategies where
Yeah.
you guys are going?
So a few things to touch on here. HTC has always been very, I would say, positive to Web3. Even 4 or 5 years ago, they integrated CryptoKitties
Hmm.
into
Yep.
into some of their early phones, and they also integrated a very early version of Axie. So they are very innovative, I would say, as a company. I'm definitely interested in seeing or kind of going back to that and seeing what the next step is. When it comes to VR, overall, I'm more bullish, I would say, on AR as a technology to have deeper connections, I would say, with, for example, assets like Axie, so that you can have them in real life rather than having to travel somewhere else that's not that where you aren't, I would say, physically. So I
Yeah.
think that because Axies are kind of digital pets, people want, like, you have your pet in real life too. You want to see them interact with different things. So to me, that's actually more exciting. From a metaverse perspective, I think it's such a very buzzy word, and really has lost a lot of its meaning. It does not interest me that much in terms of the how you are actually experiencing it. So what I would say is, when you are in VR, it's just one way of interfacing with the internet. And
Yeah.
when you are in and when you are in VR, if you're interfacing with the internet and Web3, that's probably the closest what we have to a metaverse. But you can still interface with Web3 without having on a VR headset. So,
Hmm.
to me, that's just how I view it. I think
Okay.
like the internet with Web3 is actually the metaverse.
No, I get where you're going with it. I understand that. I'm looking at, and again, VR may be just very early. We'll find out as Meta builds out their next generation of their headset, and maybe how HTC goes. But I'm intrigued with the potential of how Web3 could find its way in there, which is really, I think, very valuable. I want to jump over to the idea of community. Now, one thing I've noticed, and we notice, just with what we do around tracking sentiment, a lot of that is done within social. And The scenario that plays out within this is you find these communities, and Axie is a good example of one that has a tremendous community. I was just looking at, your website, and I'm just thinking, you think about what's happening on Discord, which to me, Discord is a very dysfunctional aspect of building communities. It's a very unique way of engaging. Plus, it's also somewhat limiting because of the amount of level that a casual gamer has to go through to get just to engage into a community. What about going in and building your own communities? Your own app native community that you'd have a user, maybe a tie-in with a Ready Player Me, building within the community itself and drawing in users that way, as opposed to like riding on these backbones of others.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, the the way I see it is that wallet to wallet communication in terms of signing messages with your Ron name service, as will
Mm-hmm.
eventually be released, that you can
Yep.
message each other there. That's actually like a social network in itself that is being built. It's going to take a long time to ship that over time, but that's actually a part of like having users own their own social graph rather than being a part of, let's say, a community like Discord. But at the end of the day, people need some place to gather, a town hall, wherever that might be. And I think right now Discord is the best place we have to have discourse. Then of course you can get different signals. I would say on Twitter, for example. So the funny thing is the Ronin community is actually very active on Twitter. So we had I think I was replying randomly to Treeverse, a tweet there. I can share the link with you guys after. You can maybe put it on the screen. Is that they were looking for what kind of blockchain should they deploy on, and I said, well, here are the benefits to Ronin, and I think that got
Right.
like 500 likes or something around those lines. And I think if upwards to 100 comments, like people are very excited about showing their public support because they feel like they can participate, because they feel like they have a voice. People want to be
Yep.
seen and heard, and
Exactly.
I think that is actually the problem with Discord sometimes, because it's quite difficult to be seen and heard if there are so
It
many
is.
voices. It's kind of the same on Twitter too, but at least then it's a little bit clearer somehow.
Yeah, I think, well, within ecosystems like that, I think closed social, whether you looked at federated social, I mean, if you think about what's going on with Mastodon, kind of that evolution of where that may go, obviously Noster which may eventually someday be something unique. Obviously, the UX is one of the big challenges there. So I think the key here, and this is something we do even within our own community with our Diamond Circle, is we have a private group on not a Reddit community, but a private platform we use. And I have found that the engagement is real, but I do agree with your point, is that especially when you get into something like gaming, you're right. I think players and just in audience and community, they do want to be seen and heard into a certain extent. The question is, do they want to be seen and heard by the masses or by the community that matters? Because that's a different perspective.
Yeah, it's very interesting to follow actually what's happening in the NFT space right now when it comes to these PFP collections. Particularly what's happening with doodles and moonbirds, and
Yeah,
just the fact that the community is so angry about the price going up or the price going down, and communication from founders, and I think there's a lot to learn here for every NFT founder. I think that that's in the space right now about just how careful you have to be with communication. And if things are not going well, people will read the absolute worst into whatever it is that you're saying. So I've had dealings with Poopy before, and the Doodles team. I always found them to be very reasonable. But it's unfortunate also that some things get taken out of context, even if it's a little bit sad to see all the vitriol that's happening there, because being a
yeah,
founder is a pretty rough job, right? And if you go and log in, and you're in a rough patch, probably that seeing so much vitriol is not always helpful. So I think that's a little bit sometimes problematic with communities, but at the same time, founders really need to be better. Basically, like we can't we have to think that, and in a very strategic way, and because we will be held accountable for everything that we say and do. And at the end of the day, the community is what you rise and fall with, right? So you have to
yeah,
really respect them, be humble about what they are, I guess,
totally.
contributing to. And I think something that we have been very good at with Axie. for some of the early like community members, they hold mystics. We care a lot about them, but it's quite hard to always please everyone all the time, right? So there, it's actually building a community is incredibly difficult.
I want to jump over to the topic of Epic Games. They've added obviously a lot of crypto games to their stable, and it looks like it's going to be a success. They're claiming that people like these, so this is a good sign again for a major studio starting to diversify and move in this direction. Do you think we'll see more of this in the industry starting to transition over? I know GDC is coming up. I know you're going to be there. Um, what are your thoughts on that? How much integration do you think we'll see in the next couple of years?
I think we're just at the start here still, right? Because the I think Axie really proves what is potentially possible when you open up some of these economies. Now, was everything perfect? Obviously not. But I think really disregarding everything that happened there is kind of you throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think the smartest people in the room, they don't do that. So when you look at something like Epic Games, they're opening a little bit up for Web3. They want to do some experiments. I think that's great. More competition in the space, and it will also make sure that the products that we're shipping are even better. So I would definitely want to work maybe with Epic Games in the future, but for now we are still building our own thing, and we need
Okay.
to ship that first, and then eventually I think we will be more open to also working with some of these other app stores.
Aleksander, how important is it, do you think, that games like Axie need to be able to kind of, well, spread their wings a little bit? You look at kind of like what Unity has done. There's a lot of integrations in with smart TVs. We're seeing a pretty good expansion of how games can find their way into other aspects. Is this an important strategy that you think will emerge for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so our game, the Axie Origins game, for example, is built in Unity. We have a good, collaboration with them. But for now, we haven't prioritized, let's say, a deep integration with Unity because we really want to be very close to the teams that are deploying
Mhm.
on the Mavis Hub, because the Mavis Hub is actually more of a publishing platform. So what that means is that it's not open for anyone to really work with us. We want to have a good idea of what kind of games are coming so that we can curate it a little bit more to our community. So one of the things that we see is if people have too many choices, you just kind of lose it. You lose track of everything, right? You don't even know what to buy or sell or anything like that. So that when there's so many launches all the time, it kind of loses its meaning. So that's why we
Mhm.
actually didn't want to open it up for too many yet. But of course, like as the user base starts growing, there will be different type of people who want different type of genres of games, and that is really when it starts to make sense to open it up so that anyone can deploy.
Right. All right. So Netflix is starting to roll this out. You've got 50 plus mobile games coming to Netflix just in March here. And this is a big deal because obviously they already have a user base that's significant. The potential here, and let me go to a chart here because I think there's some data. Here's the Netflix, the mobile data, the global downloads by month. And you can look at this all the way back into 21. I mean, we've had a little bit of decline and then a reclip right here in 20. This was in 22. And I think if we look at this longer tooth, the data has continued to climb. This appears to be a fairly significant opportunity for a platform that already has a massive user base. What about those kinds of opportunities for Web3?
Yeah, I think we'll get there as well. Right now, we're still, I would say, in the infrastructure phase where the amount of work that needs to be done to actually provide just a good user experience for people to trade, like to set up their wallets, it's still not quite there. So actually, with Axie and Ronin Wallet, we are now enabled social login, so that you can just if you download the Ronin Wallet, you can easily be able to create your wallet using mobile, using email. And I think that is the way it should be, the user flow. So these kind of, I guess, improvements are getting there. But until we are really, I think, at the ready for the main stage, it's probably better if we don't partner with them, because what will happen is that you the users that these guys have, let's say the Netflixes of the world, they
Hmm.
are so the real retail, I would say.
Yes,
And when I'm
yes.
looking at what happened in the past, for example, when people have been trying to onboard retail people, let's say, I think there was one episode of a very mainstream TV show. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but something like CSI or where they had to solve a crime case in a metaverse. I think maybe it was 10, 15 years ago or something like that. And as a part of that activation, they tried to say that, oh, the movie, the TV show is not finished. The next step is you log into the metaverse and you can
Hmm.
continue the case. And the studio that was, I think it was Second Life actually. And when people started creating their user in Second Life, I think that there were so many failures. Like everyone dropped into the same place, and then
Yeah.
they were kind of arriving there, and then it's like, oh, what do I do now? And there's literally nothing because the entire experience in the metaverse or in these universes are still so early that it
Yes.
takes time to develop it further and to have these great user experiences that retail can actually handle and fall in love with.
What? Okay, so Amazon moving into the NFT space. Likelihood question I have for you is: will we ever see Axie maybe within Amazon? If you just look at things like what Mini Royale has done, and on Magic Eden, and the potential there of integrating into some of these bigger marketplaces. What are your thoughts on this? Strategically, is this something that will be good for Web3?
For one point is it is good, right? Because there are more eyes, more distribution. People can see it, fall in love with it. The flip side is it compresses the fees for the project, right? So it really depends on the business model that the NFT project has. So for example, for Axie, we care a lot about secondary fees because that means that we can give more upfront value to our users without having to sell massive things in primary sales. But if there are no secondary fees, you might have to say, okay, we're going to have a massive primary sale so that we can develop these games moving forward. So yeah, it's just a business model choice. So for us, it's probably not the best fit, but I think we can do strategic trials, I would say, with smaller things in the Axie world on some of these like more general marketplaces. But it also depends on, do they actually have people that will buy it
Yeah.
or that understand Web3, because it's such a massive like learning experience, as I said. So even if let's say Amazon is now distributing, Axies, people have to buy an Axie, and then they have to do all the things that we are that we are trying to teach them.
Right.
But if we
Yeah.
don't control the marketplace experience, they might just try to buy one. Maybe they're buying the wrong one, right? So there are all of these other challenges when it comes to this that we have to be careful with.
Well, when you have more complex systems around the NFT itself versus, say, a traditional IP that's easily recognizable and it's more collector oriented, I think those will be the varieties. But I think it will be eventually a gateway drug into understanding what the future of Web3 NFTs are. So it's going to bring in a lot of people into the space, starting to ask questions and want to know, and
Mhm.
probably start to explore a lot more.
Yeah,
Talking about
I mean,
mainstream, I want to get your opinion on this. And this was a Veve launch. Variety and Veve paid to get this done, but it was Variety pushing it out. And I mean, if you look at the numbers here, this got 4.8 million views. Uh,
mhm.
Gosh, 507 retweets, a bunch of likes. But the problem was that this turned into almost a press nightmare because there was so much pushback, obviously because of the IP, Cookie Monster, Sesame Street, that's kind of an American icon and somewhat protected, I think, in the hearts of many consumers. Um, what is your strategy? And what are your thoughts, I think, in reference to how you roll out into mainstream? Because it's very delicate. You kind of touched on this just a minute ago.
Yeah, we see these, failed launches, I would say. And, it's not necessarily that it's going to fail from a monetary perspective, but user sentiment is not sometimes great with these
Right.
IPs. Even with the Porsche launch, when Porsche launched their NFTs,
Good
it was kind of
example.
tone deaf related to the price point of those
Yep.
NFTs. I think at the end of the day, they managed to flip it around a little bit, and now maybe the floor price is even up, and hopefully that will give some more benefits to the holders there. But I think that was a close to a disaster and not what that IP actually deserved at all. So for Sesame Street, I don't really know too much about the IP. I would say I would assume that they've done like thorough user research, and they did at least get a lot of press PR for it. So I guess the real question is like, is all PR good PR?
Yeah.
And then you can say for the NFT space in general, there is so much hate from the mainstream media and from mainstream
Yes.
retail that
Yep.
it's starting to become a problem. And I think Meltem Demirs had a really amazing tweet about this, where she said that the reason that mainstream people hate NFT people is because NFT people feel that they are so much smarter than mainstream people, and in
Ah,
reality, it's just because they were a little bit early, and it's really
yeah,
hard for mainstream people to accept that. Oh, just because you were a little bit earlier in buying that NFT or whatever it might be, that you're so much smarter than us, right? And the NFT people a lot of the time feel very prideful because they figured this shit out early. So that is a very it's a
yeah.
recipe for a
It's
lot
a
of like heated
cultural.
arguments, I would say.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a
exactly.
cultural. The good thing is that I've seen this before. It was the same thing that happened on the birth of the internet. When you were early on the internet, you were looked at as a crazy conspiracy theory person, and you were looked at as a super geek. Obviously, that was kind of the anti-cool thing at the time, and until people realize, hey, this is going to be pretty
Yeah, so
much
so
in the
we're
fabric of
gonna get there,
society.
right? Yeah, it really depends on the benefits that it adds to the users, right? And as long as they actually realize that it's better to own a digital asset fully, like that you have true digital property rights versus being at the beholden to the big platforms that they can do whatever they want with
Right.
it. Like that is a very it's about freedom, right? Freedom of the internet.
Yep.
Like this is a part of the internet that should have been existing from the beginning. So to me, I just see it as another an expansion to the internet that is needed, and that we are now actually rolling out. And it's going to take a little bit of time for people to get used to it,
Yeah.
and it's going to take a little bit of time until the ickiness of basically the cash grab culture that was in NFTs for some time. It actually it improves, and even that is the same for Axie as well. So the IP definitely has some of that because there was a lot of users that were educating other users on Axie, and that use case maybe that they were educating them on was not necessarily the case. So it's
Right.
hard when you see people coming in and they learn something from someone who maybe doesn't really fully understand it. And we see this happen a lot with crypto as well, where people are saying, "Oh, you should buy this because of this reason,"
Exactly.
and maybe that reason doesn't even resonate at all with the underlying, where that project is headed. And that's
Yeah.
something that we're working a lot with when it comes to Axie. So how do we actually try to control the narrative a little bit better and make sure that it doesn't run away from us on the second wave now?
It's going to be interesting because of the evolution, I think, with this next cycle of we'll call it crypto, but even though gaming, I feel like Web3 gaming does not necessarily stride with what's happening in the crypto markets. And it has kind of its own uniqueness. So I do think there's a big opportunity here. Obviously, we've invested a lot in our own media company to really focus on this. Um, Obviously, the announcements today, the Ron staking, that's going to be huge. The potential here for expanding the game studio stable, absolute game changing, I think, for what you guys are doing strategically. Anything else on the roadmap that you guys feel is going to be a big, iconic move for Sky Mavis?
Yeah, so what I will say is my vision for Sky Mavis is that in the future, people will be able to play games on their mobile phones. They earn some tokens, and then they will be able to seamlessly just spend the money that they've earned in a shop to buy chicken or whatever else that might be.
Yeah,
And I think that's such a powerful thing because the meaning of that basically means that people own their own assets. They don't have to take part in their local economies in some other coin or token that fiat currency, right? Which they
sure.
are being obviously like losing value, right? In people should be able to choose themselves what they want to pay in, and I'm very excited about that. So for Axie, of course, there's so many exciting games that are being built, and the Ronin network I think is just getting started as well. Adding all these different type of products that give benefits to game developers, and actually showing these game developers some of it, like what does it actually mean to work with a studio like Sky Mavis. I think I'm incredibly proud of that, of our team building out this publishing and operating platform, so that the teams that we work with really feel like they are being seen, and that they are being heard when it comes to the problems that they have, whether it be towards tokenomics, whether it be to go to market, like building smart contracts. All of this other stuff is something that we are working very heavily on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say very excited about that, and also maybe finally as a little bit of another thing to mention for game developers is that we're also working on a way to share more of the revenue from that Sky Mavis earns from the Ronin wallet
Mhm.
moving forward. So that would be basically if you guys are, or like a game studio will be able to bring in, let's say, 100,000 users to the Ronin ecosystem, they will be able to capture some of the value that those users spend over time. And I think
Very
that is
cool.
also very compelling for game studios. So hopefully we'll be able to roll that out quite soon.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, Aleksander, always fun drilling it down with you. I love to get your insights on the industry. So thanks again for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Paul.
You bet. All right, so you guys are tuned in over on the podcast side of things right now. That's cool, no problem. But really, what you get a chance to do over here on YouTube channel is really get a deep dive and an immersive experience on a lot of the things that we show and we're referencing typically in our communications and also in our interviews. So it's really the best place, I think, to engage with us. And one of the other best places to engage is in our Diamond Circle. That's our own private community. We've got a great Substack that shares additional content, a lot of alpha, a podcast that's only available over there. All you have to do is click the link down below to join in on that. If you guys want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on Metaverse Insider.